It's March 24, 2025, and a small indie game called Schedule 1 was released into early access on Steam. It was released with no marketing, no major publisher, and was made with basically no budget. 1 week later, it was on Steam's top sellers list. 2 weeks later, it's beating AAA games like GTA 5, Assassin's Creed, and Monster Hunter Wilds. These were games with hundreds of millions of dollars in budget, thousands of developers, and years of development behind them. And the craziest part? It was made by a single developer. At its peak, nearly 460,000 players were playing this. A game where you build your own drug empire, manage supply chains, hire employees, and launder money. All while the game's graphics look like SpongeBob's battle for Bikini Bottom.
Now, say my name.
Schedule 1.
You're goddamn right.
However, the game didn't just go viral. It changed the entire gaming industry forever. But how did that happen? How can a drug tycoon simulator made on a $0 budget change a billion-dollar industry? To understand how this happened, we need to rewind and look at the game. At its core, Schedule 1 is a drug empire management simulator. But if you look at it deeper, it's much more than that. It embodies everything from crime, capitalism, managing employees, supply chains, and in general, running a business. So when first starting the game, you're a small weed dealer that brings some packages to his neighbors. You start off in a dirty motel room with a few green weed plants around you, and you even have to clean the trash yourself, which at the beginning of the game, I spent more time with than I would acknowledge. As you progress through the game, you start mixing together weed with everyday items like motor oil, and you create recipes that feel like they were created by Gordon Ramsay during a nervous breakdown.
It's fucking raw! It's real, okay. What is that? Look at that. Overcooked on the bottom, crispy as fuck, and it looks like Gandhi's flip-flop.
Then you package everything into baggies and go and sell it to your customers, all while you're constantly dodging the police and the curfew. For the first few hours, this is your gameplay loop. But from there, you scale into a bigger operation. You go from organic drugs to synthetic drugs, expanding distribution, hiring employees that might cost you your last nerve, laundering money, all while trying to stay away from the cops. And all the stress that comes from building a drug empire. But saying that all you do is selling drugs would be doing the game a huge discharge.
You can sell anything, sell me this fuck.
Drugs.
You can sell anything, sell that. Go ahead. Sell me that pen.
Sure, that's the core of the game, but it somehow manages to merge so many different aspects perfectly into one hilarious ecosystem. And that's what makes the game so special. At any given moment in Schedule 1, you might be growing your plants in a motel, running from police on a skateboard, pickpocket someone, break a freshly baked tray of crystal, arguing with one of your friends on how to split the profits, or panicking because a bug made all of your employees quit and now they look like they have an existential crisis, asking themselves if working for an underground drug lord is really the thing they want to do. There's so much variety in these games and so many different mini-games that even tedious tasks like packaging weed into baggies doesn't feel like a chore, but it feels very organic. And no, there is no pun intended. And while there are bugs in the game, they somehow feel like they are part of the charm. Visually, like you might have seen by now, the game is functional, and the graphics have their very own unique style. Instead of trying to look like a hyper-realistic game, which many games try and fail extremely hard at,
16 times the detail.
Schedule 1 keeps a cartoony style with extreme attention to detail. The little phone you whip out of your pocket, the different growth stages of your plants, or the banking system, which, to be honest, looks even better than the interface on my real banking terminal. And even though there are a few visual bugs, clicks don't always work, and animations that are missing, the weird part is, none of that matters. I have to admit, in the first few hours of the game, I feel like the graphics were really off for what the game is. But the longer I played the game, the more I started to love it. And honestly, thinking about the fact that he tried to get the entire city addicted to crystal, the look of the game as it is way better than having some hyper-realistic junkies running around. And that's exactly the vibe of the game. It tries to be funny in a cartoony way and doesn't take itself too seriously. It's hilarious because it's constantly bouncing between brilliant and broken. And all of these parts are what makes it really special. None of what you do feels like a chore, but everything just grows naturally. And all of this would already be impressive from a mid-sized indie team. But the part that really blew my mind was that the entire game, every mechanic, every system, every animation was made by one person. A solo developer operating under the name Tyler's Video Game Studio. There's not a lot known about Tyler, but what we do know is that he did something that big game studios see as witchcraft these days.
Ooh, scary. No! No!
He actually listened to the players and what they wanted. And it seems like if you actually do that, you don't need a huge marketing team, PR budget, or a QA department. It was just him, the player feedback, and probably a high tolerance for caffeine from all the long nights working on the game.
I don't want my coffee shaking.
On December 9th, 2024, he released the first demo of his game called Schedule 1 Free Sample. The promo he did was not the one you would expect from a viral success like this. For example, he posted in the subreddit Play My Game saying, "My solo project Schedule 1 has now a demo available on Steam." Further, he revealed that he has been working on the game for 3 years now. It didn't take long until the positive comments started coming in. From people saying things like, "I want to say I'm buying this the moment it goes on sale. Probably one of the best games I've ever played." Or another one that said, "I've been playing the free sample and I have to say I'm impressed by your work. I have whitelisted the game and plan on purchasing upon release." Now, after the release of the demo, he started listening to the player feedback in his Discord and aggressively made the game better. If you just take a look at his Twitter timeline, the game received more updates in 4 months to its release than most EA games received after their launch. And that includes all of the apology patches.
And to all those affected, I want to say, we are deeply sorry. We're sorry. I'm deeply sorry.
But the really refreshing part here was the intense honesty he had. When there was a bug in the game, he had no problem saying things like, "I'm still working on fixing it because I can't find the issue." He wasn't trying to act like a company. All he wanted to do was to create a game that people loved. The best part about this? He was everywhere, replying to people on Reddit, his Discord, or doing dev streams. At this point, it was clear that this wasn't your typical publisher promising the world, selling as much as he can, and then stopping the work on the game like 6 months later. This was a guy that in real time duct taping the game together and fixing all of the mistakes along the way. And when he first announced the official launch date on March 24, 2025, it was dated just 4 days after the highly anticipated launch of Assassin's Creed Shadows, a game where Ubisoft promised to go back to its old Assassin's Creed roots.
That was a lie.
And looking at the state of Ubisoft right now, they desperately needed a hit. The gameplay trailers of Assassin's Creed looked extremely promising. And for many fans, this was an instant buy because all of the promises Ubisoft has made.
Shut up and take my money.
The competition was huge for Schedule 1, with so many players already being committed to buying the new Assassin's Creed game. But Tyler had one big advantage: the current state of the AAA game industry. I mean, if we are honest, the last decade of video games hasn't been too kind to us players. And if you've been frozen for the last 10 years and haven't touched a game since then, these are probably the questions you'd ask yourself. Why does this digital airplane cost $75? Why does this guy look like a giraffe? Why are there ads in a game I just paid $60 for? And why does every game nowadays have a battle pass? It doesn't matter which publisher you're looking at, every one of them had at least one major outtake which took a major swing at players' trust. Ubisoft? Well, they turned one of their most loved and most successful franchises, Assassin's Creed, into what can only be described as an open-world template with a different historical setting every single year.
Fuck this shit! Came in this fucking room and everything went fuck.
See, it started as a tightly designed stealth action game set in rich atmospheric cities. And now, it's a checklist simulator. It's the same game every year, just in a different century. Sure, the worlds got way bigger, but not because there's way more meaningful content in there. It's because Ubisoft filled them with stupid things like collect those 87 Viking toothbrushes across 5 different map regions just to somehow pad out 60 hours of playtime. All the side quests stopped being meaningful. You stopped helping guys like Leonardo da Vinci to craft Renaissance parachutes. And now, instead, you helped sad farmer number 12 to find his lost cow. And immersion is broken every time you are asked to climb a 700-foot watchtower just to reveal 6 new icons that all contain basically the same mission. And the gameplay loop always goes like, go there, kill this guy, come back and repeat. EA is now the company that was voted for the worst company in America twice. They rebranded Battlefield from one of the best gaming shooters into this. Honestly, Battlefield 2042 is such a broken mess that I don't have any words for it. But I think the fact that they decided to remove the scoreboard because it's toxic out of a shooter game says it all. And then there is FIFA, which is now rebranded into EA Sports FC because they couldn't even keep the rights to the name. I mean, for at least 8 years, they have been selling the same game over and over again, with slightly different menus, shinier grass, and a monetization system that even landed them in court. Yes, that's no joke, it landed them in court. They tried to sell their loot boxes and packs as surprise mechanics.
Look at it as surprise mechanics.
Instead of admitting that they are actually selling a gambling system to children. And Bethesda, the studio that gave us Skyrim and Fallout, is now doing this.
And it's our biggest one yet. It is 4 times the size of Fallout 4. And this time it features all new rendering, lighting, and landscape technology. It allows us to have 16 times the detail and even view distant weather systems across the map. I read on the internet that our games have had a few bugs. All of this just works. I'm not kidding.
It feels for every arrow in the knee beam we posted, they added another glitch to their game. I mean, let's talk about Fallout 76. This game was so poorly executed on every single level that I again lacked the words to even talk about it. NPCs were missing, there was no dialogue, and the game was full of bugs. And the only thing that seemed to be working was the Atomic Shop. But it didn't even stop at the game. They sold a collector's edition where customers paid $200 for a canvas bag. When they arrived at the doorstep, it looked like this. And instead of making it up to the customers, it was a statement along the lines of saying, we had a prototype but it was too expensive to make, so we decided to just go with a bag like this. It was only after months of complaining and starting a lawsuit that Bethesda gave the player some kind of refund, which turned out to be $5 of in-game currency, which, sadly enough, wasn't even enough to buy the canvas bag in the game. I could go on for another half an hour about how badly Bethesda failed, but if you want to know more about the entire downfall of Bethesda, stick to the end of the video and I'll link you another video that shows you everything in depth. And the sad part about all of this is that Fallout 76 wasn't a rare exception. It's just one of many. Because the deeper issue is that 95% of the games released nowadays feel like they are created with the same cookie-cutter template. And they feel like they're designed by people who don't even play games themselves. Look, I can go into ChatGPT now and give Ubisoft the next idea for their Assassin's Creed games by just asking 3 basic questions. Question 1. What time period hasn't been used yet in the Assassin's Creed games? Give me a list of 10 ideas. Question 2. Give me the name of the protagonist and their backstory in short words. Question 3. What ancient weapon can we turn into a microtransaction? Okay, so here we got it. Mayan civilization with our main protagonist X, who just has the same cookie-cutter backstory as every other assassin. And then, my favorite part, we got the Obsidian Blade for $7.99. Boom, done. Here comes the next big idea, Assassin's Creed Eclipse. And the worst part? That you probably greenlighted. We are at the point in gaming now where monetization and sales numbers are more important than the actual fun of the players. Now, speaking of monetization, this is really the part that pushed me personally over the edge. I remember when I was a kid and dragged my mother to the next GameStop to buy a new game. New games would cost about $50. Then, with the release of the PS3 and Xbox 360, the prices were slowly but surely increased to $60. Which was also kind of okay because you were getting a full game and it worked. But now, some games at launch are $80, and you are still asked to pay for DLCs or battle passes. I mean, we've reached a point where single-player games now feature XP boosters, because nothing says immersive storytelling more than getting asked in the middle of your run if you want to speed up your journey for the next 2 hours for only $4.99. And it's not just the players that have enough of it. The developers are also fed up. See, the same people that create Assassin's Creed Brotherhood are not the same people that are working on Assassin's Creed Shadows. These are entirely different developers. Why? Because some of the geniuses that worked on a success like Brotherhood were fired. And it's no wonder. They had to work 80-hour work weeks before a big launch, only to get a thank you for your service and a mention of their name in the credits of the game. And this happens right before they get fired. Take Bungie, for example. In 2023, they laid off dozens of developers right after securing a $3.6 billion deal from Sony. The same happened from EA and Activision. They report record-breaking profits and then cut hundreds of jobs. All while the executives are cashing out on huge bonuses. And those that weren't fired? Well, most of them are walking away. See, those developers are highly creative people, and they are tired of being told their ideas are too risky. They are tired of having to release broken games. They are tired of letting the players down. So they left and decided to work on their own creative ideas. Some of them formed their own tiny studios with just a handful of people. Others started solo projects in their bedroom. And out of that frustration, out of all the burnout, the layoffs, and the ignored feedback, we started seeing something new. The indie movement. Those games don't follow the rules. They are not designed to sell season passes, and they don't try to please investors. They just want to create fun games. And that's exactly what they did. They created pretty fun games. But for quite a while, indie games were just like this. The cool little side projects you played between big game releases. At the same time, big gaming studios would roll out stunning trailers, promise innovative gameplay, and hold press conferences like they were announcing the moon landing, only for a game to launch with half the features missing, 40 gigabytes of day one patches, and a roadmap that eventually ends with a "we are sunsetting development" tweet. And why those big AAA gaming publishers were focused on sales and numbers? At the same time, indie developers just made what they felt like the players would love. Slowly but surely, indie games connected with players. And now they are a serious competitor to the cookie-cutter AAA industry. And they work without insane marketing budgets, fancy trailers, and huge press conferences. They are simple, heartfelt, and sometimes janky games. But people love them because they respect your time and your wallet. And one of the best examples for that is Stardew. This is another game that was made by one single guy with the username Concerned Ape. He got the idea for the game after being a big fan of Harvest Moon, and he was probably also disappointed by how bad the game has gotten over the years. So he decided to make his own modern version of it. In a Reddit post, he states that he had been working on this game for over 4.5 years, teaching everything to himself: programming, art, animation, and sound design. And what he made was magic. See, Stardew Valley drops you into a pixelated countryside, gives you a few rusty tools, and basically says, alright, let's go build a new life. And when I first played this game, I spent hours farming, mining, exploring caves, catching fish, and talking to all the unique town people. There are no battle passes for seasonal crops or energy boosters that lets you water your pumpkins faster. All you can do in there is to spend countless hours with the game and have fun while doing it without being asked for payment. The result of that? As of today, he sold over 41 million copies. Then there's Hollow Knight, which is a hand-drawn platform game made by a tiny team in Australia. They raised money to make the game on Kickstarter, and there they were talking about the vision of the game and telling players about their idea. People resonated so deeply with the game and the idea that it got 57,000 Australian dollars in funding, and they delivered a masterpiece. Honestly, this game reminds me so much of the old Kirby or Metroid games, which I played on my Game Boy as a kid, and honestly, I loved the game, even though I didn't play it as much as Stardew Valley. Hollow Knight just drops you into a ruined kingdom called Hallow Nest and lets you explore the Fallen Kingdom. The rest is up to you. The result? Over 5.2 million copies sold. But my personal favorite over the last years was The Long Dark. And just imagine you'd pitch the idea of The Long Dark in a Ubisoft boardroom. Let's make a slow, quiet, and extremely punishing survival game. There are no zombies, and we also don't reward the player every 10 seconds. If you'd actually do this, you'd probably get kicked out of the room and lose your job. But this is the success formula of The Long Dark. See, your plane crashes in the Canadian wilderness after geomagnetic disaster, and that's it. If you are like me and start with the survival mode, there is not a lot of hand-holding or big tutorials. It throws you into the world and you learn by constant trial and error, trying to survive as long as possible. You start by scavenging food leftovers, boil toilet water, and try to not get caught by those wolves. And all the things the AAA games have, like fast travel or quest markers, the game doesn't have any of that. Sure, you get a map, but it starts completely blank and you have to draw it out yourself manually. It doesn't happen automatically. Last winter, I played this game for hours on end with my girlfriend. And I died more times than I can count to meat I thought I could still eat and then ended up with food poisoning. And yet I loved every single minute of it. As of today, The Long Dark has sold over 5.5 million copies and they constantly kept releasing new content. And even though they released a DLC, I purchased it happily because it added so much extra content to the game. And when you compare games like Stardew Valley, Hollow Knight, and The Long Dark, you start to realize something. They don't play and feel like each other. There is no shared formula. There is no standard industry loop. One is a farming simulator, one is a very brutal platformer, and the other one is a quiet survival game. But the big thing they all share is the soul. And the question of the developers, would I want to play this game? And I know, this is a very romanticized view of indie games. So I just want to mention it. For every single Stardew Valley we have, there are countless of indie games you have never heard of. Games that never made it out of early access. And the truth is, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And a lot of the time it will happen that the Steam page of the game just gets buried under some anime dating simulator with very questionable thumbnails. However, what we can say is that indie games are constantly growing and they are over the last 2 years gaining traction. They are no longer just little distractions between blockbuster releases. More and more indie games start winning on every single front. And for the first time in many years, players aren't just giving indie games a chance, they chose indie games over blockbusters. And I personally had the same experience. See, I'm a huge Assassin's Creed fan, ever since the release of Assassin's Creed 2. I played them all: Brotherhood, Revelations, Assassin's Creed 3, Black Flag, Rogue, Unity, Syndicate, Origins, and I even 100%ed the Ezio collection. I played the games up to the point of Odyssey, where I personally had enough. And looking at Valhalla, this was probably a great decision. And when I announced Assassin's Creed Shadows promising to go back to their roots, I was pretty hyped. However, nowadays I'm a pretty cautious buyer of freshly released games. So usually what I do is I wait for a couple of reviews, watch Let's Plays, and then decide if I really want to play the game. And even then, I decide if I want to go and purchase it for the full price or if I want to wait for some kind of discount. And while I was looking at Assassin's Creed Shadows reviews and Let's Plays, something else caught my attention, which was Schedule 1. I looked at the gameplay and thought it was insanely funny. So I called one of my friends and asked him if he wanted to play the game together. Since we both got burned by a lot of AAA games, we played the free sample for a couple of hours first, and then we looked at each other and said, okay, let's get the full game. And since then, we've spent countless evenings playing the game together. And we haven't had that much fun in a long time playing a video game. What I didn't know at the moment, with the experience I went through, I wasn't the only one. Thousands of players, many of them burned by broken promises, made the same decision. And when I look today across Discord servers, Twitch streams, or YouTube videos, the same pattern started popping up. Someone stumbled across Schedule 1, looked how scuffed it looked, gave the first sample a try, disappeared for a couple of hours, and then got the main game. It honestly spread like a wildfire, and there was more and more content about the game being made. First there were a couple of clips on TikTok. Then there were Reddit threads where someone explained their whole lab setup. Then YouTubers and Twitch streamers that want a 20-minute fun session because they saw the game, only to start a full Let's Play series on the next day. Every place was flooded with memes, and the Steam charts showed that Schedule 1 had grown past heavy hitters like Palworld, Elden Ring, and even the biggest competitor that launched just days prior, Assassin's Creed Shadows. At its peak, over 450,000 players were playing the game online at the same time. Let me just say that again, nearly 500,000 people played a cartoony drug-dealing simulator. And all of this without paid streamers or sponsored giveaways. The game's Discord server ballooned from 500 to 100,000 members in just a couple of weeks. People submitted bugs, organized multiplayer sessions, and some even started writing fan fictions. Just to put that into perspective, how monumental this success is. It's the equivalent of someone mixing a song together in GarageBand and suddenly selling out Madison Square Garden. And the most surreal part? While this was happening, the developer Tyler was still casually posting updates on Twitter, with the only difference that his updates wouldn't get a couple of hundred views, but now over 1 million. This was one of the purest, most unfiltered examples of a game explode due to an incredibly worked out gameplay loop and the hilarious mechanics. And this showed the world something AAA publishers have long forgotten. If a game is truly funny, people will find it. And suddenly, that changed everything. And the main question becomes, why did Schedule 1 really win? And did it change gaming forever? And now, the main question suddenly becomes, why did Schedule 1 really win? And did it change gaming forever? Well, the answer is not that easy, because if you just look at sales numbers, Schedule 1 is definitely not playing in the same league like Assassin's Creed. However, if you look at the things that really matter to the players, which is fun, then Schedule 1 definitely won. And it didn't win by being absolutely perfect. It won because it was real, chaotic, and cut right into what the players actually wanted. See, AAA studios take forever to make changes. If they want to tweak the UI, for example, or some kind of menu, they have to go through weeks of meetings, planning, and then, if someone gives the whole thing green light, they go and start working on it. And the result of that? The features take months before they get published. Indie games, on the other side, have the benefit of being able to act quickly. All it takes is one good suggestion on Discord or on Reddit. The developer sees it, starts working on the update, and the update is live on the next day. And that's the next key feature. Most indie developers, they listen to community feedback, sometimes even in real time. And the loop works like this. Suggestion comes in, dev responds, code gets updated, then tested, and at the end, put live. And the way Tyler uses his community is exactly that way. He doesn't just see his community as a fan base for him. He uses them as a feedback and idea team. The game evolved with the players together, making players a part of the whole experience. Now don't get me wrong on this, there are still AAA companies that are producing extremely good work, like From Software with their entire Dark Souls genre, or Rockstar Games with Red Dead Redemption or GTA. But unfortunately, they are the rare exception nowadays. But did Stardew 1 really change gaming forever? Well, kind of. The entire indie industry is changing gaming. And that's a breath of fresh air to me. See, speaking from my experience, as someone who loved playing video games as a kid and a teenager, at some point, I just stopped playing as much as I used to, and I somehow lost my love for it. I was telling myself that I just lost it because I got older and never questioned if the games could be the problem and not myself. So at some point, I even stopped playing completely. But when I started diving into the indie games, like The Long Dark or Stardew 1, they really ignited something in me I haven't felt in years, and now I would say they brought the love for games back to me. And if we take a step back from my personal feelings and just look at the numbers, then indie games have generated $4 billion in revenue from January 1st to September 30th, 2025. This is 48% of all full game revenue, according to the numbers of Steam. Of course, this leaves out the entire console player market, but this doesn't change the fact that indie games are rising in popularity year over year, which shows that this isn't just a fluke, but the start of something bigger. Because it gets back players like me who think they lost their love for gaming. It gets back players that are tired of lip service, overblown hype, and empty design. They are shifting games to something that is unpredictable, weird, and at its core, honest, because they feel like they were made by a human for another human to have fun, and not just to extract money. And Stardew 1 shocked the gaming world because it showed that being an indie game no longer means that it was made cheaply, and that you can't expect much from it. It's actually the polar opposite. It just shows that creativity and the fact that the game has actual soul to it is the real winner.